Good evening, everyone. I want to begin by apologizing to all the residents of Carson for what I have done and for what I'm about to do. A special heartfelt apology to all of those Carson residents who voted for me and supported my candidacy last year. I'm sorry if I'm going to disappoint you. One of the greatest honors of my life has been serving as a council member in the great city of Carson. I am often asked how I like serving as a council member. And while sometimes we get bogged down in insignificant, trivial, personal matters that take up a lot of time at our city council meetings, I actually love being council member for the city of Carson. While we sometimes disagree as council members, again, over these insignificant, trivial, personal matters, I think 99.9% of the time, we are united as a council. On the big issues, that is, we are united. On these big issues, I, like my colleagues, have always voted based on what I thought was best for the city of Carson and for its residents. Because I know the moment I don't, the same residents that elected me will unelect me. Before I proceed, I want to make the following disclaimer. As some of you know, I am an attorney and can't help myself. So this is one of those moments. As our city attorney stated, the item for discussion today, while technically having nothing to do with the Oxy project, I think just about every single speaker referred to the Oxy project. And while I and the rest of my remarks will try not to refer to the Oxy project, in addressing some of these remarks and concerns, it will be hard for me not to. But I want to reiterate and just make absolutely clear something that our city attorney said. This moratorium has absolutely nothing to do with the Oxy project. Has absolutely nothing to do with the EIR. There's misinformation on both sides. The Oxy project EIR is continuing right now. We have a moratorium in place right now, and that EIR process is continuing. It's not halted, it's not stopped, it will not be delayed, and it will not be postponed because of this moratorium. Again, this moratorium has absolutely nothing to do with Oxy project or its EIR. That will continue and come to its eventual conclusion towards the end of the year sometime, if not later. Which brings up a second point. This moratorium is only for 10 months and 15 days. I'm just bears repeating what our city attorney said because there's misinformation. I saw a flyer from the Carson Chamber of Commerce saying that this was a moratorium for 2 years.
2 years.
It's absolutely false. It's only for 10 months and 15 days. I saw information being disseminated by those in favor of the Oxy project that this moratorium is going to kill the project. That's absolutely false. It has nothing to do with that project. Next, I want to state that I have been asked over and over by business people, labor leaders, and residents where I stand on the Oxy project. And I have not formed an opinion on the Oxy project one way or another. You can speak to anybody and they will tell you that I have never stated an inclination one way or another. So I don't feel that I have in any way disqualified myself from the Oxy project by proposing this moratorium or bringing it to where we are today. I have been an elected official for over 20 years. And in those 20 years, I've seen a lot of things, and I've been subjected to a lot of lobbying, but never to the level of lobbying and arm twisting and pressure that has come to bear on this single vote tonight. And in fact, I want to share with the audience an example of that. Last Thursday, at about 1:10 p.m. in downtown Los Angeles, I was invited to meet with a gentleman. He and I had been trying to coordinate a meeting for about a month or two, and when I arrived at his office, he told me that we would be meeting in the boardroom, and just as I was about to walk in, he informed me that there were other people waiting for me in the boardroom. I walked in, and in retrospect, I probably should have walked out, but I didn't. Out of respect for these union leaders, I did not walk out. But I did not appreciate that ambush. That was not fair, and it was not right. It was disrespectful. Absolutely disrespectful. And we discussed the moratorium, and I expressed to them my concerns with the moratorium, and we went back and forth for about 45 minutes, and I then told them that I would have to leave shortly because I had to go pick up my kids at school. And then something that I thought would never, ever happen to me as an elected official happened. The gentleman said, "Albert, I want to make something absolutely clear to you, that you will oppose this moratorium." He said that if I did not oppose this moratorium, that his union would find somebody and run them against me. I got up, went to the door. I had been locked in, I forgot to mention that. He took his key, unlocked the door, and let me out. I should have stood there and challenged him on telling me what to do, but I didn't. I was outnumbered, and once as a kid, I got beat up by 5 other kids, so I learned, hey, when I'm outnumbered, I don't fight. But I'm not outnumbered today. And I want to tell this gentleman that nobody tells me what to do. Not even you. I don't care who you think you are or how powerful you think you may be. Nobody tells me what to do. You know, there's a flyer being disseminated by the Western States Petroleum Association, and it says, the Carson City Council's actions appear to be, I'm quoting here, actions appears to be a response to outside groups with little connection to the local community. Yeah. Nobody told me to put forward this moratorium. Nobody. The outsiders are you. You're the outsiders. of mine, Emiliano Zapata, has a popular quote: "Prefiero morir de pie que vivir de rodillas." I prefer to die standing than live on my knees. To my other brothers and sisters of the labor movement, I want to say a few things. I was pro-labor before any of you ever supported me or talked to me or encouraged me. Why? Because it was the right thing to do. I encouraged our employees at the Water District to become organized and form a union and become part of ASME, the first in the state. Why? Because it was the right thing to do. I pushed for the first of its kind resolution, the Water District committing that we would enter into a PLA for any water projects. Why? Because it was the right thing to do. When these water projects were ready to come to fruition, I pushed and led the effort to enter into the first of its kind PLA with the Building and Trades Council under the leadership of Robbie Hunter. And I was featured in the newsletter. Why? Because it was the right thing to do. When President Obama, in his State of the Union, called on local governments to increase the minimum wage, which I know is an issue that's dear and important to the labor movement, when we called on local governments to increase the minimum wage because Congress was not acting, I led the effort. And we increased the minimum wage here in the city of Carson to $10.70, the highest in the state. Why? Because it was the right thing to do. I have opposed every anti-union state proposition and supported my brothers and sisters in other efforts because it has always been the right thing to do. But this time, my brothers and sisters, you're not on the right side. I have heard reference to jobs, to thousands of jobs, to hundreds of jobs. The fact of the matter is, this has nothing to do with jobs. At most, there will be 24 jobs over the life of this project. At most, 24 jobs over the life of this project. And just as I know nobody here won the lottery tonight, I know that nobody here is going to get one of those jobs because the odds are against it. I'm not a scientist, and I'm not a geologist, I'm not a petroleum expert, but you don't have to be smarter than a fifth grader to come up with the simple decision that when you've got 10,000 residents who live in their homes within a very short vicinity of that project and 24 jobs, it's a no-brainer. It's an easy choice. It's an easy choice. If this were about jobs, 24 jobs, if it were about jobs, you'd solve that problem tonight. I would make a motion directing our city manager to hire 24 people. Pay them even more money than they would get on this project. More benefits than Oxy gives them. But it's not about jobs. It's about money. It's about more money than you and I can ever fathom. It's about more money than you and I will ever make in our lifetimes combined. It's about money and lots of it. It's not about 24 jobs. More on that a little bit later. To the business community and the Carson Chamber of Commerce, with all due respect, you're wrong too. There is nothing anti-business about this moratorium. Nothing. In fact, what has prevented Carson from developing and bringing in more jobs and more businesses is the contamination and the pollution that we have. The history of Carson, as the residents know, but for the benefit of others in the audience who don't know, involves a period of time where our community, our area, before it was Carson, was literally the dumping ground for the entire LA County area. Literally. We have more former landfills, junkyards, and contaminated sites than is allowed in some third world countries. And I'll be damned as this council member if I'm going to do something that allow more contaminated activities to come into the city without first taking the time to make sure that it can be done safely and properly. That's, as our city attorney said, that's all this moratorium does. It gives us time to come up with the proper strategy. As the last speaker said, it gives us time to talk and see if this project can be done safely with the proper safeguards for our residents. Now, you know, as a kid, I used to ride my bike to a jackrabbit field, and I used to think it was cool when I would see orange dirt, yellow dirt. One time I even saw blue dirt. I used to think that was cool. Years later, I learned that I was playing on a former landfill. Luckily for me, I don't have any adverse health effects. I don't have any tumors or cancer that I know of yet. But our neighbors, living at the carousel tracks, are not so lucky. They have to live with their health ailments and their problems every day because of the actions that were taken by an oil company 50 years ago. That oil company, at that time, when it closed down its facilities, did everything in compliance with the law then, and sold the property, and these nice homes were constructed on it, and 50 years later, it was discovered what was underground just 3-4 feet below. And these people are now living that nightmare. And one of the defenses that Shell Oil puts forward for not doing anything for these residents is because they complied with the law. They did everything that was required of them back then. And 50 years later, our neighbors here in the city of Carson are living with that every day. It has been said to me by the Vice President of Engineering and Operations from Oxy USA Incorporated, Mr. Mark Kaplecki, that they are proposing to do nothing different than what has already been occurring for the last 50 years. Well, I have two responses to that. One is, just because it has been done there and there haven't been any ill effects of it today, that doesn't mean that something won't come up tomorrow. Just like the carousel track. Some of you may say, well, Mr. Robles, we have new laws. We have federal regulations that would never permit another carousel to occur in the city of Carson. We have the Safe Drinking Water Act that protects our water. We have the Clean Water Act that protects our water. We have the Clean Air Act that protects our air. But those regulations that have helped clean our air and protect our water do not apply to oil companies. So then you may say, well, but there are state regulations. Surely there must be state regulations that could provide some protection to the residents of Carson today, as opposed to, years past. Well, as you just heard, SB 4, which was just signed by the governor last year and just took effect this year, is in the process, barely in the process of developing those regulations. There are no state regulations. Well, Mr. Councilman, surely there must be city regulations. Come on, the city must have done something to learn from what's happened in the past. Well, you just heard our city attorney state that it has been over 20 years since these city regulations governing oil and gas extraction have been updated. That's all that we're asking for with this moratorium, is the time to carefully review this project. Moreover, if the city were to introduce new regulations, I have a letter here from the law firm of Alston and Bird, Oxy's other law firm, other attorneys, saying that it's their position that any city proposed regulations, I'm quoting here, city's proposed regulations of oil and gas activities are preempted by the state. That's their position. So what does that mean? Even if we as a city were to come up with regulations that would provide protection for our residents and our businesses, it's Oxy's position that they don't care because it doesn't apply to them. This is the company that you want us to embrace and welcome into the city? Last week, there was an article in the Los Angeles Times describing a pollution and contamination that is disproportionately falls on black and brown communities like Carson. Carson is a great city, and our future is unlimited. And I don't want our future to be polluted and contaminated. I want it to be clean. I want us to have clean air and clean water. You know, one of the speakers said, yes, we do need gas to drive our cars. But you know what we need more important than that? We need clean air and clean water to live. Now, I don't quite understand how, I know a few people have attempted to explain it to me, but I don't get it. I mean, we're talking about the city of Carson. Somehow, it's been represented that this is much bigger, that this has national implications, regional implications, statewide implications, national implications, hell, even international. I don't get it. I mean, it's the city of Carson. Fact of the matter is, the oil that will be extracted from this field in the big scope of things is a drop in the bucket. At one of our previous council meetings, someone said, well, gas prices are too high. Yes, they are. This project is going to do absolutely nothing to reduce those gas prices. Nothing. I am, like our city attorney said, very mindful and respectful of the different positions. I think that unless we have this moratorium in place, it is possible that Oxy can commence their project without any city regulations, because they're over 20 years old, without any state regulations, because they're not ready and they won't be ready till sometime next year, and without any federal regulations, because they don't apply to them. I think, given that the decision is actually very easy. I was elected to represent the residents of Carson.
Hello.
Therefore, I waive for the reading and adopt by a 4/5 vote urgency ordinance number 14-1538U, an interim urgency ordinance of the City of Carson, California, extending the 45-day moratorium established by ordinance number 14-1534U on the drilling, redrilling, or deepening of any wells within the jurisdiction of the City of Carson that are associated with oil and/or gas operations, and declaring the urgency thereof to ensure the public health, safety, and welfare is protected during the period of the extension for a period of 10 months and 15 days.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Motion by Robles, second.